Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers here at Campaign for America, and I'm with my co-host, John McCann. John, welcome again tonight. We've got a lot to talk about, don't we?
What's going on, Steve? Has not been a slow summer at all.
Well, it hasn't been a slow day for me, I can tell you that. All right, folks, we're going to get right to it. A lot's going on around the country, a lot's going around in certain states that are certainly going to affect us as we move forward towards Election Day in November. But there are important topics that we're talking about tonight that certainly will affect you, and we're going to share with you how you can be able to help us move forward as a conservative Republican Party, as a country that believes in the Judeo-Christian values in which our nation was founded upon. All right there, John, New York Governor Cuomo, boy, has he stuck his foot in his mouth after criticizing Republicans and I mean, bashing Trump daily during his news conferences and on and on and on. He is now in very serious trouble. So the question, John, you're the lawyer here, that I've been asked consistently is, what if this guy don't want to resign? What next?
Well, it becomes political to us. But what we have, the county prosecutor in the district where the jurisdiction lies, that he has asked the Attorney General's office for the files, so that it does look like they're going to establish a criminal probe. Now, a criminal probe in this matter, Steve, these types of potential charges are really misdemeanors. It's battery, assault and battery, things of that nature. And if you haven't had any previous criminal records or things like that nature, it's very unlikely that someone like him would do jail time in that regard. But the criminal probe does also go towards remaining civil liability. It appears the governor has opened up the state to lawsuits, not only for himself but for the state of New York to pay these people fees. And I would suspect that we're not going to hear right now. They've identified 11 people in the report. I think you may see others come out now. They may be relevant to the report, or they may not be. But it's a very straightforward case. I was reading the AG's report, and for anyone who wants to read the Attorney General's report of State of New York, just go on the AG's website. It's front and center. It's a long document, but they get to the details of each of the victims, and they detail the laws that were broken from a civil perspective, and make their findings accordingly.
Folks, keep in mind, you heard the old sayings, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, we have a case in point right here with Governor Cuomo. Now, I was on the air today with a couple of major media networks, and a question I was asked is, well, what do you think there, Lieutenant? You think the Democrats are very sincere now in the New York State Assembly in removing Cuomo and sincere in respect to the victims? And I put it this way, John, I said, there's no way on earth that I'm going to believe that none of those people in the Assembly or in the New York State Senate didn't know that a lot of this stuff was going on. My point is, folks, is that, these politicians, whether you're Republican or Democrat, are in a situation where they know someone like Cuomo is violating the law, violating women, doing all sorts of creepy things. They just sit there and watch. And they don't say anything. And now, John, I would say this, that maybe if investigations continue forward, I know the Attorney General said her job is over, but there should be a Senate hearing, a Assembly hearing in New York State. I don't think it'll happen, because my guess is it may lead right to some of those people who are now seeking his removal from office. And you've been around a long time, John. You think maybe this is the way some of this can end up?
Oh, certainly. As to your point about people knowing, let me just read a portion of the conclusion in the report. So this is, I think the Attorney General agrees with your point, and that is, the AG says, the final paragraph of the report says, we also find the executive chamber's response to allegations of sexual harassment violated its internal policies, and listen, in that the executive chamber's response to one complaint's allegation constitute an unlawful retaliation. In addition, we conclude that the culture of fear and intimidation, the normalization of inappropriate comments and interactions, and the poor enforcement of the policies and safeguards contribute to the sexual harassment, retaliation, and overall hostile work environment. So what they're saying there, Steve, is that there was a pattern. And if there's a pattern in the executive office, and in this case, the executive chambers, there's no secrets in politics at that level. You know that. I'm sure a number of legislators were aware of this for years, not for weeks, not for months, but for years. But what do we have? We have a governor who's seeking an additional term. He has somewhere in the vicinity of $18 to $19 million in the bank ready to go. And we see other people in his party who want that job. We have a retiring a mayor of New York who's very ambitious. And in this case, it is well known in New York that the Attorney General herself has her eyes set on running for governor herself. So that doesn't diminish what these victims went through, but it does indicate, why this may be happening now as opposed to 2 years or 4 years ago.
Good point. I had mentioned that in the air too, that it's all about the politics of personal advancement. And that's what a lot of these characters are doing. And one more point on this topic is New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy. John, he was real quiet. I mean, he should have come out of the gate and condemned this immediately. It appears, or it's a fact now, that he waited for Joe Biden to come out and make some sort of a statement. Biden, who's as creepy as anybody you could ever imagine, he comes out and now finally says Cuomo should resign. And then Phil Murphy, who, by the way, folks, I pick on him not only because he's the socialist governor here in New Jersey, but he's also the vice chairman of the National Governors Association. He should have come out of the gate and said, this is wrong, this is bad, Cuomo should resign. And I think, John, that's the problem. These people don't have courage. They got to follow whatever the leader says. And that's so frustrating for the American people. So I hope, John, that people of the state of New Jersey are watching all this unfold and realize that they have an opportunity come November to elect a Republican governor and a Republican legislature that will represent the common good of the people and not the common good of politicians.
Well, there's one more point that needs to be addressed. If he doesn't step down, Steve, they're going to impeach him. They have no choice now. When you have the president of the United States, the leader of their party, ironically, this guy, as you mentioned, being the one to call for his resignation, given the allegations that came out this time last year with regard to the president himself, serious allegations that were never really refuted. So they're going to impeach him. The impeachment process in New York is very similar to that of the federal government, where you need a majority in the lower chamber and you need 2/3 of the Senate. And the Court of Appeals, which is New York's Supreme Court, they weigh in on that trial themselves, and then they vote to remove. And can you imagine, just for a second, where all these Democrats, even they may be late, have now all come out? Except, by the way, I haven't heard from Kamala Harris. Have you? I mean, I haven't seen any comments from her regarding, excuse me, not Joe Biden, but regarding Governor Cuomo. I find that interesting, but that's the process that's in place. And I cannot imagine where so many high-profile Democrats have now asked for him to step down that they wouldn't impeach. The thing that they are most concerned with, Steve, is their brand. Okay, that's what's driving this. As indicated by the AG, this was a culture of fear and intimidation, normalization. That didn't happen in a week or a year. She's indicating that this has been an ongoing problem for who knows how long.
Well, and one more point about Governor Murphy, and then I want to move on. By the way, I normally try not to spend too much time on this chat thing, but someone just reminded me of something, and I'm going to answer it on the air for a reason. Many years ago at Columbus Hospital, you, meaning me, gave me a book you wrote. Thank you. It's terrific reading, Cops and God, right? Yes, I'm the author of that book. John, I'm so thrilled that this book may be 40 years ago, and running into people who've read it, and it's spiritual folks, and I'm glad that this person reminded me. It's refreshing to see something nice after the day I had. So, all right, folks, I want to go on to one more thing about Phil Murphy, and this is to the unions again. And it's to the New Jersey State Police Fraternal Association, the New Jersey State Troopers fraternal association. Fellas, I don't get it. And I say this to all police unions. Your unions are endorsing the very people who are trying to destroy your careers. I mean that. I've been a cop for 38 years. I've never seen such an advancement of a socialist agenda to take the jobs away from cops, to destroy their careers. What about to the Troopers Association and the police unions? Don't you have anything to say about bail reform that's hindered your ability to put people behind bars? What about civilian review boards? John, I could go on and on and on. And when I read that the Troopers Union endorsed Phil Murphy in New Jersey for governor, frankly, I was stunned because there was an attorney general he appointed that was not friendly to cops. And I've got to tell you, folks, we got a real problem on our hands. I mean, we're going to back the blue. We will always back the blue, but you can forget about backing any of those union leaders. And I would hope that the police unions wake up and realize, at least the union membership realizes, that their union leaders are not a friend of theirs or a friend of the public. But John, I think you're with me on this. We'll always back the troops, right? Always back the men and women in blue on the streets. All right, John, something very sensitive has come up, all right? And I am very vocal about the things I believe in. And you're like me. One of the things is we can say what we want because we're not bought or sold. Whether people like it or not, we try to bring across some opinions involving a number of issues. Well, this is about the Republican messaging, Republican Party messaging, the conservative part of our party messaging. And folks, I've got to tell you, we've got too many chiefs and not enough Indians. Now, I've been very vocal over months and months and months about extremism, the extremism on the left and the extremism on the right. Extremism on any side of the polls is not good for the country, not good for any of our parties. It's just not good. The Democrats became so extreme that they now have the socialists and communists being their mouthpiece. What I'm beginning to see, John, is that we do have some people out there who are conservatives. And these are words now that I received today, all right, from people. I had posted something about a pastor, right? And I'm not going to mention the person's name. It's over and done with. I said what I had to say. But I got a lot of positive feedback in relation to what I said, because apparently this pastor, and it's on video, and that's just not this particular pastor, but it's others, stated that if anyone walked into his church, I guess a church service, with a mask on, not without a mask, with a mask on, he would throw them out. Now, this is what was reported. And what bothered me is, first of all, as a party, as a conservative party, we need to stand on the Constitution of the United States. You know, John, we're going after the Democrat socialists for making mandates. And this, to me, was a mandate. I guess the guy has the right to do it. It's his church, but very, very troubling that anyone would do that. And so people had asked me or had defined this as bullying and you're trying to humiliate people, not me, but the pastor and others, bullying and intimidating and humiliating people to make decisions that they would not normally make. So my question to you is this, John, and I did receive quite a lot of feedback, and I got to tell you, overwhelming support of what I said. In fact, it was not just support in what I said about the pastor, but support and finally somebody standing up and addressing the issues we as a party have. There's been issues regarding certain candidates that the Republican Party is supporting. And what did the extremists say? Well, you're a Rhino. You're a Rhino. You're this, you're Rhino that. Well, I tell you what, John, I discovered very clearly today that if Ronald Reagan was living today, he would be the #1 Rhino in the eyes of a lot of people, because he did compromise a lot, not on principle, but on what was for the common good of the people, especially when it came in his relationship with Tip O'Neill. So my thought on this, John, is this, and I'd like you to weigh in on this, is that we have to stop fighting each other as conservatives. We need to listen. We need to accept, not to accept, but to respect what other Republicans are saying and not immediately call them names and dismiss what they have to say. Our enemy is the socialists and communists. But I've got to tell you, it's troubling. I've never seen it like this. But we carry on, we move on, and we're going to continue to do what we've got to do and be truthful. But the truth hurts, doesn't it?
Well, there's a bigger issue here, and that is, I believe what's taking place with some of these anecdotes that you, for instance, the pastor that you just mentioned. I think people from a broad perspective, Steve, are frustrated. And when, particularly, if you're introduced to politics vis-a-vis your liberties being taken away, you haven't really paid attention. You didn't go to a council meeting in your town, unless maybe they didn't pick up your garbage. People start to become engaged after things start happening to them. And that's what's happening on the national level. So you talk about, a mask mandate. So you have some inconsistencies with regard to masks. Now, I'm not a doctor, far from it, but I've had to do a lot of research as it relates to some of my cases. And just yesterday, Joe Biden's, one of his chief advisors for COVID, Dr. Michael Osterholm, he's the head of the Center for Infectious Disease and Research in Policy out of Minnesota, who's one of his advisors, came out and said we need to focus on N95s and that the cloth masks don't work. Well, the CDC study said that in 2020, and so did the WHO. And then things started to change. So when you see, extremism on our side, I think it's coming from a perspective of, wait a minute, my liberty's being taken away, and I'm frustrated. Now, I don't know the details of this particular case, but I will say it doesn't do us any good to be shooting at each other, politically speaking, when we need to get back in control of at least minimally the House of Representatives. But you definitely need the Senate if you want to stop the agenda. But we're going to need more senators, even than we're going to need more than 2 or 3 lead. We need to take it back at least by 6, 7 seats.
Well, John, my point is we should all be against mandates. There should be no mandates at all about vaccines, about the mask, et cetera, et cetera. But when a leader in our party, all right, supposed to be a leader, at least a spokesman, an influencer, sets a mandate on people that you won't come into my establishment if you have a mask on, I will throw you out. I think about the senior citizens who look at. I respect everyone. If a senior is frightened of getting the virus and they feel a little better with a mask on, fine. You don't threaten to throw them the heck out of a building, let alone a church. But this is what's going on, and I get you. I hear you about the frustration, but what we've got to do is and you and I have done this, and many have, and I'm so happy with the number of conservatives that are now getting in touch with me. They want stability, John. They want leadership. They want a steady ship, if you would. And we've got all kinds of people on our side that really, I just don't know where they're getting all this stuff from. And boy, you just coined it great. We got to stop shooting at each other. And so as we're shooting at each other, the socialists and communists are sitting back and laughing. And what does Khrushchev say? We don't have to fire one shot. Let them kill themselves. So here on Campaign for America, folks, is look at, if I see something that I don't like within our own party, our own conservative movement, I've got to tell you, I'm going to call it out. I call this out. Overwhelming number of people personally and private messaged me and said, great, it's about time. But I had a few pretty vicious attacks. Look, I can take it. I've been around a long time. But what is disturbing to me, John, is that people are being led down a path where they're not thinking before they're talking, and they're not thinking before they're acting. Look, I am a firm believer in liberty and freedom. And we have a constitution that we need to respect. But if conservatives, John, are not going to respect the Constitution and yet preach the Constitution, then we lose and they win. And I love your point about we shouldn't be shooting at each other. Boy, I'll tell you, I couldn't have coined that any better.
No, but that doesn't mean you're silent in the face of someone's acting out in an inappropriate way. And I do believe there is a substantial difference between the Republicans for the most part and the Democrats. And I don't want to maybe even attach party, maybe attach ideology, say conservative to say the communists. The conservatives like myself, we tend to be principally based, and we start from there. We're not looking for a win when someone stands up and does something wrong on our side and we speak out against it right away. we're not looking at the political implications. Whereas the socialists look, everything is Machiavellian from the political side. How do I gain advantage from this situation, whatever that situation may be? And the New York governor is a prime example of that. How long it took the governor of New Jersey to come out. We still haven't heard from the vice president. So no, we have to speak out for what we believe to be the betterment of our society and for the people that we represent. But I got to say that someone asked me a couple of years ago, well, I'm very concerned about the Christian right, and I said, well, why so? They said, well, religion. I said, listen. I said, whether you believe in God or not, I do, okay, is really not the point. We have the Jeffersonian wall that prohibits America, United States, from creating a state-sponsored religion. We don't have the same kind of barrier to the communists. And if you've ever read any of their ideology, if you read Marx, you will soon see that it is every bit a religion in its tone and in temperament and in application as any of the major religions in the world.
John, I also stated something last week, and again got a lot of comments from both sides of the opinion. I had tweeted out something and broadcasted something to this effect, that I believe pastors should not become entangled in politics. And my reason was that when they become entangled in politics, they compromise. That's what entanglement means. You're going to compromise on a lot of the principles that you believe in. And I was trying to get a point across, and I used Reverend Peter Marshall. Remember, he was the Senate chaplain, U.S. Senate chaplain many years ago. Great preacher. And I was trying to get pastors to understand, look, we all have a calling. My calling, John, your calling is politics. I call it the secular pulpit. We're out here doing what we can do to help America, and we can bring scripture verses and biblical principles into our talks. But I felt strongly, and there's a reason, which I'll share with you in a minute, that pastors need to focus on the gospel of Jesus Christ, if they're Christians and other ministers in their faith and the rabbis, focusing on God. You can reach people with the sword of the Spirit, the truth. Why get entangled in politics? Well, of course, a lot of people got what I said, but there was that, again, a little bit of the fringe group that just jumped all over me and said, well, pastors have been involved with politics forever since the revolution. That's right. I used the word entanglement, not involvement, you see? So instead of thinking what I said, right off, they went off their rockers. And the fact of the matter is, folks, is that I want you to think about this. The reason why I brought that up years ago, John, you don't forget things in life. I made a speech when George Bush was in office in support of some of the actions he took in Iraq, okay? And there was a minister who was at that event that I made the speech at, and he was highly critical of me. You're a Republican, you're this, you're that. And I looked at him and I said, well, who are you? He says, well, I'm the pastor of this church across the street. And I said, well, Pastor, I have a question for you. You're attacking me over my public policies and what I believe in. So my question is this to you. And I said this to the guy. What if my soul was hurting? My heart's hurting. I'm down and out and I want to come to you, or I knock on the door and you open the door and it's you. You think you could really now minister to me? You think you could really do that? So the guy was stunned when I said that, and it is what it is. But I think that so many people are hurting today, and they're distrustful of politicians, people in public office. There has to be an outlet, and I always said it was our pastors who can stand on the gospel. But we got pastors running around, which I believe, yeah, John, we've said it. Talk to your congregants about public policies and the values that we stand on about the Constitution. But please don't make that your primary mission, because your calling, at least in my view, if you're a pastor of a church, is the gospel, is the word of God. Go ahead, John.
So you mean Reverend Al Sharpton, for example, or Jesse Jackson, you know,
Yeah.
and that's on the
And
left.
others, look, and others on our side. Now, look, I use Reverend Peter Marshall as a great example of a guy that didn't get entangled. Charles Stanley, Billy Graham. I mean, I could go down a list of all these pastors. They got involved politically. Jerry Falwell, right? I mean, Jerry back in the day, he got involved politically. But what he did was there was a fine line. He never gave up what the Bible says the first love, which was Christ. Okay. So my point is, my wife reminds me constantly, you can't serve two masters. If you are the man or the woman of the cloth behind the pulpit, you're going to serve God or you're going to serve man. You and I could. All right. Not that I think man is a master, but we are, like Reagan said, we're involved in preaching behind the secular pulpit. And I kind of hold pastors to a higher level than I'm at. I do. Some people say you shouldn't, but I do, folks. Okay. The fact of the matter is, I know I could never be a pastor, but I can be involved as I have in politics and be effective. John, it's yours.
Well, I've experienced that personally. A couple of years ago when I ran for Congress, I asked my priest in my parish, in my hometown, if he would mind giving an invocation at our grand opening announcement, which we were already running, but it was a big party. In fact, Steve, you came to that one yourself, and so he declined. And when I go to church, there is always some comments with regard to implication regarding gun control and various other social issues that appear to be coming from more of a political slant than a religious slant. And it is, and the father of the parish doesn't understand, but it has cost him some parishioners. I mean, I know people that are members of the Knights of Columbus that do not go to that church because of those very things. And they certainly wouldn't go to him for confession because they feel that, he's not, that he's become more preachy from the political side of things. Now, I don't particularly care what he says with regard to politics, because myself, I just put that in my back pocket, and he's entitled to his opinion. But I have seen that hurt him with his own parishioners, where they don't trust him, or that's not the right way to say it, where they don't feel comfortable being preached at with regard to secular issues coming from the altar.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. At least for me, I can only speak for myself, is that I'd like to go to a church and worship God. I don't want to hear the political nonsense. I don't want to hear about this policy, that policy. I want an uplifting message, and I believe that that's what Christ wanted. I believe that God wants us to have at least a place of refuge. But look, I'm not the pastor. Whatever they do in their churches, they do. But all I said was I think that we all have a calling, and we just have to take a little pause. But it goes back to the other point. You disagree, all right, with certain conservatives. Right away, they're on the attack without ever thinking. A simple word, in my view, entanglement. They didn't see the word entanglement. They saw the word involvement, and bingo. So my point is, again, folks, is that we really have to take a step back and think. Now, today on the air, John, again, I was put on a spot a lot on some of these TV networks today. And I was asked about, well, why is it that people, whether it be Democrat or Republican, are not thinking before they're talking? Why are they taking sides without really getting facts? And I brought up this point, John. We're all falling into a trap where we're just being glued to one opinion, glued to one station. Folks, I'll tell you what, I read a lot, I study a lot. I look at both sides of an issue. I guess my whole life I did that as a police officer, investigating cases. And John, you as a lawyer, I'm sure you did the same thing. And then what I do is I look and read and research every issue, and then I formulate a decision based on what I researched, not on what this host said, what that host said. And then I find out, John, wow, I didn't know this. I didn't know that. And then some of the things I have questions about, sometimes I'll be able to make a call and try to ask somebody, well, what's their view? So we try to implore people, and I know you agree with this, John, is for people to stop taking as gospel everything anyone on TV is saying. Remember, folks, I've been in the TV business, right? 25, 30 years. I was on the first show, one of the first weeks Sean Hannity and Alan Combs was on the air on Fox. I was on that broadcast, okay? So that's how long I've been on the air. And you know what I learned, John? It's all about ratings. All about ratings. And that's not to say that a lot of these hosts don't have sincere opinions. But I was asked about journalism specifically today. And I said this, and John, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. We don't have journalism anymore. Everybody's got their opinions, espousing their political agenda over the air, whether it be right, whether it be left, whether it be center. We are not being given enough information to formulate our own opinions. You talk about government control, we're being controlled by the media. But we can stop that if we just take a step back and think about, this is what so-and-so said. Let me really do some research and find out if there's any truth to that. John?
Well, one of the things that surprised me as technology, the internet, more readily available, how many people take advantage of that? I mean, I started off this broadcast by saying, go read the AG's report on the governor. Don't, and the reason why I suggested that people do that is for the very principle that you're speaking about. Don't take what I'm saying, and take it at face value, but do your own, take the time, if you care about the country, and these people probably do, take the extra step and do the research and do the reading. Knee-jerk reactions don't get you far, even in your personal life. You walk in and you're having something with your spouse or your child, and your first knee-jerk reaction is an emotional response, and where that goes. Ultimately, it goes to a bad place with your family, and then you're apologizing, hopefully, for something you may have said in anger. But knee-jerk reactions are generally not a good way to participate in anything, regardless whether it's politics, family life, sports, academics. Evaluate. Take the time to evaluate. My father always used to say, "Think before you speak." And that's hard to say to a 10-year-old boy, right? With any 10-year-old boy, you're full of testosterone, trying to find their way in the world. Then you get your teens and you act in an age-appropriate manner. But, Steve, we have a representative republic. We do not have direct participation democracy or a parliamentary system where everyone has to be right. Okay, under the Republican tent and under the Democratic tent, you're going to have many subtextual issues where people within each party are going to disagree with each other. It's how you handle those disagreements and how you marshal your assets to move forward. And I keep pointing this out in our broadcast. President Trump had 18 people that were running in the primary, and he never ran for office ever before. And what marveled me about President Trump was that he could have easily destroyed the winning coalition that from the other candidates. And we even saw a video of him having dinner with Mitt Romney, for crying out loud. Okay. So they attacked, some of those comments they said to each other, little Marco Rubio, go on, the list is legendary. But President Trump's leadership I was astonished, and I didn't think he had that skill. And that's what And again, maybe that was my knee-jerk reaction to a newcomer into politics. But I have to give him kudos, and I have to respect politically what he did. He put together a winning coalition that I haven't seen the likes of since Ronald Reagan. And so, as a country, as a society, we need to be civil with each other. We can disagree. We can passionately disagree. But at the end of the day, we still have to work with the other side, because you're not going to have total control. You're never going to have 100 Republican senators in America, okay? And you're never going to have complete control of the House of Representatives. It just doesn't work that way. And America was founded on strong Judeo-Christian value principles, but compromise was achieved to create the great republic. It wasn't done through dictatorship or mandates, as you pointed out earlier.
And keep in mind that President Trump, I'll tell you what, it was refreshing to see a guy like him get up and break the back of the establishment. And folks, through all the criticisms that he has taken, don't forget, this is the guy that brought us the Abraham Accords. This is the guy that put our embassy in Jerusalem. This is the guy that kept every promise. So with all the faults that people like to find about him, let's not forget all the good he did. And John, you bring up a point. In order for him to achieve what he did, he had to bring a lot of compromise to the table, especially when it came to the Mideast. but he knew what the end game was. He knew what the goal was, to bring peace, and it worked. This is why when there are conservatives out there calling people rhinos because they're talking about, well, maybe we should get half the pie and 3/4 the pie if we can't get the whole pie. Remember, President Donald Trump, who was a Democrat, all right, who supported Democrats, he was able to conquer the beast, if you will, right, John? He was able to slay the beast of politics by using a very methodical, strategic way in making sure that the American people came first. But there was, like you said, he took Ronald Reagan's playbook and he went forward, and he knew, what does he call it? The art of the deal. He knew what the art of the deal was. And a lot of that has to do with compromise, but not on your principles. You compromise on your strategy, on the way you do things. So, John, that's an excellent point that you bring up. Let's get to New York City. I was there last week with Natasha. We are becoming very active in the mayor's race in New York City. Bill Pepitone is a conservative who, no doubt in my mind, if the things go the way they are, he'll be the next New York City mayor. But, folks, the beginning, maybe the real beginning, John, of the end of democracy in the city of New York is on its way. Passports are here. My wife, as we know, her and many of her friends that were raised in the Soviet Union are watching this closely, and they've warned people that once it comes to this, you might just see now passports where you're going to have to get into another town, where you're going to have to get into a supermarket, on and on and on. They're still happening across Russia, folks, and in other countries where you need to open up a passport to get in from New York City, let's say, to New Jersey, or this state to that state. And I'm concerned, John, that the passports are going to be mandated now. By the way, the vaccine today, the Secretary of Defense stated they're going to mandate all active military personnel to take the vaccine. They have no choice. They're under military orders. The only thing we can do right now is make sure that we make some big changes come election day. But recruitment's going to be affected. I'm sure you're going to get early retirements, and that'll be the end of that. But my point is this, John, is that in New York City, we now have the destruction right over the horizon of Broadway, because de Blasio said it's you got to have a passport to go and see a movie, a play, a Broadway show. So that's the end of Broadway in New York. Gyms, that's the end of gyms. And there's some other buildings, restaurants. Imagine that, John, restaurants. In the capital of the world, New York City, you're going to have a vaccine passport. And these businesses, and I heard some of the businessmen on the air tonight, they're just fit to be tied, John. Now, I know the government, you're a lawyer, can't mandate these things, but my goodness, what do these people do, John, legally?
Well, there's going to be, and there has to be, and I don't like to talk about myself, but I am one of these people affected. I have, as you know, Steve, was hospitalized with COVID last fall and have been suffering with what's called COVID long haulers. And it's been challenging. And but, we put one foot in front of the other. Now, I have immunity. Okay. I'm in a study in a New York hospital, and there is no indication for me to get a vaccine. I have the antibodies. And so what is the medical indication for me to get a vaccine? And where I have antibodies, T cell, B cell memory cells for life. So it will take someone like me to bring a lawsuit and to indicate that this is requiring the passport is interference with the Commerce Clause. It's interference with I have to cross the state line to go to New York City. I have to go from New York to New Jersey, and I'm not able to go to a restaurant because I didn't have a vaccine, even though I have immunity. Now, I'm sorry, that's not scientifically based. That's the definition, in my opinion. It's just an opinion, a legal opinion. Maybe a judge will disagree or agree. I don't know. But that's the very definition of arbitrary and capricious. To require vaccines for 100 million people that already had the virus, okay, and there's no medical indication. There's not one study they can point to. They can make noise and pound on the table and say, oh, the vaccine gives you a boost in immunity. We don't know any of that, okay? There's no studies that they can point to. But what we can point to is whether or not that policy is cutting out a large segment of the population like me, okay? And quite frankly, I don't know if I should get the vaccine. I haven't made up my mind. I just had a chat with my doctor the other day about that. And, his concern and my concern is I have long haulers. There's been some indication that some people do better and some people do worse. 30% do better, 20% do worse. So, what am I supposed to do? Not go out to eat or to a restaurant and literally be discriminated against because some governor, or in this particular case, a mayor, made an arbitrary, capricious decision that doesn't bear a rational relationship to science? I'm sorry. If anyone wants to join in that litigation, I may do it myself. We'll see. But I haven't decided what I'm going to do personally with my own personal health. But that's the point. This is the definition, in my opinion, of arbitrary capricious, and that's just one lawyer's opinion. That probably 100 that would disagree with me.
Well, thanks, John. I appreciate your input on this. So, folks, hopefully we were able to share with you some of the opinions we have regarding these issues. We always tell you to research, look for yourself, and then formulate opinions based on the research you do. And look, when it comes to vaccines, and I said this on the air today, it's your business. It's not my business. It's not your neighbor's business. It's your business and your doctor's business. It's not the government's business. It's not a pastor's business. It's not a businessman's business. Remember, it is your business. So no one should be telling you that you can't go here or can't go there, or you can't do this and you can't do that if either the government or they put a mandate on you. My goodness. I mean, the day mandates were gone, John, when I believe that Abraham Lincoln had the Emancipation Proclamation, the mandate of slavery. He freed the slaves. We don't need to be slaves anymore, folks, to any government mandates. And so please keep that in mind. But do things within the framework of the law, okay? When people are telling you, and John, here's something else before we leave. I really got to bring up. People are afraid that, boy, what if you're put on the spot? I've been asked these questions where your livelihood is now in danger. They're going to take my job if I don't get vaccinated. And I've shared with people, then you talk to your family, all right? You weigh what is in your best interest and do what you think is right for you. Don't be intimidated into not getting a shot or getting a shot because of what anybody says. You pray about it, you think about it, and then you make a decision. John, what do you think?
I completely the notion that one size fits all is as a typical bureaucratic response. And keep in mind, the mandate in New York City is not a law. Okay, this is an executive order. Okay, and that needs to be. There's a lot of structural issues, and quite frankly, I've been disappointed in some of the decisions we've seen in the Supreme Court. The justices have decided to sit a lot of this stuff out, sit on the sidelines. Maybe they're afraid that Biden's going to pack the court the way that was threatened by FDR. I mean, the New Deal of 1932 and 33, the Supreme Court initially ruled they were unconstitutional programs. And then he threatened the Supreme Court, and then they found them constitutional. So, we may be in a similar type of situation with our own judges now. But people need to make their healthcare decisions based upon them. And that's what I said about myself. I still don't know what to do. I mean, I don't want to be part of the 20% that do worse with someone with COVID long haul getting a vaccine. But yet, on the other hand, I'm not entitled now to go to a movie theater. I mean, that's interfering with my economic decisions. And to me, baseline constitutional principles, this is arbitrary, capricious. But again, it's just I just have an opinion, and people need to consult with their doctors. They should consult with their pastors, and they should consult with their families. Listen, I got an email from a friend this week where the company was trying to couch it in that he was volunteering giving up his vaccination status. And basically the message was, you better kind of tell us or you're going to lose your job. So Steve, your premise, we're already there. People are already getting these emails at work internally to disclose what their healthcare information is. And don't forget, that goes against federal law as it relates to our own healthcare.
Well, keep in mind, folks, what President Reagan said, trust no one except your instinct. Remember, your instinct, after you do all the research and after you have all your questions answered. Now, folks, we're going to sign off in a minute, but we do have our intelligence report. It's going to be emailed in about 3 days. We have quite a lot of information about the critical race theory and the U.S. military. We got some real good stuff in that next intelligence report coming out. If you do not get our intelligence reports, you get them for free. We send it to you via email. And if you look at our little red banner down here, campaignforamerica.com, you go to that, and there's a contact information bar. All we need is your name and your email. No other questions asked, no requests for money, nothing like that. We want to inform you and keep you informed, because everything that's happening now is going to affect our lives tomorrow. All right, that's it, folks. John, any last words before we sign off?
God bless America.
Amen to that, and see you next week. Folks, next week, here 6:30 p.m. on Campaign for America. Remember, keep our nation in prayer, and thank you so much, folks, for joining us. And I've read all of these chats, and you're very good questions and very good comments, folks. I want to thank you for all of that. God bless you, and remember what the chief end of man is. It's to love, and it's to glorify God forever. Have a good evening.